just nature, nothing else. It's like being naked. It's you are standing, looking around, saying, "What now?" It was a fantastic feeling. I couldn't believe I met a woman that shared that feeling with me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. Today is the day we share the third and final section of Ejler's trilogy. This episode we're rolling up our sleeves and really getting into the homestead building, county fair beating part of this particular story sandwich. If you missed the previous episodes, then I suggest you go back and start the adventure from the beginning. You don't want to miss it. Now it's time for me to stop waffling and get on with the episode.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch!
Ejler, welcome back to the Wild Dispatch.
Well, thank you.
I should say, thanks for having me again. It's probably the more appropriate thing to say.
Well, thanks for coming down, and I look forward to our conversation and to share some food.
Yes, of course, and I see another amazing spread here, which looks absolutely delicious, and I cannot wait to tuck into that. I guess before we start nibbling, I should probably do a little bit of a recap. So this is going to be a continuation of our chat, going through your story from actually where you began in Denmark and like your desires to follow the caveman lifestyle from a young age, and then your travels through Europe and America, and then discovering all kinds of things along those travels, from going down and fishing on the coasts of Mexico and even further south, and then also, you know, finding a Viking vessel randomly in a barn, which kind of started off your whole wonder of boat building and that kind of process, which through a various series of steps brings us to this moment now where you settled into a homesteading lifestyle in Elk, which is where we are actually sat now in your farm. So, I mean, obviously we're going to tuck into some delicious food now, but yeah, you know what? Let's talk about the food first. I think that makes sense.
Very well. A lot of these things here is really a culmination of everything I've been doing up until now, because a lot of it comes from the garden here, a lot of it comes from the ocean. Most of it is from right here. There are some exceptions, of course, but they're also provided by other people with whom I have an exchange program that is very loose. I have fish, they have other things that I don't have. Together we supplement each other, and it's present here right in this tray full of food.
Through a wonderful series of gifts.
Yeah,
to one another.
indeed. There's some traditional Danish food in here, and one of them is the herring. And in a meal such as this, a lunch meal, we would start with herring.
Okay.
Should we start with the herring?
Let's start with herring.
Let's start with the herring. So
I'm going to take a little video of this as well, just so people can see if they...
yeah, so I'm just going to like bring out the ingredients for a successful herring snack.
Okay.
And I'm just going to take the lid off here, and here we have pickled herring.
Okay.
And egg. And we have the right type of bread. It's very humble.
What bread is that?
It's a blackish rye bread, all rye.
Looks delicious.
And then we have
I haven't seen anything like that in a while since being in my travels in Europe myself. That looks fantastic.
yeah, it is a really good bread. It's made by people down in Point Arena.
Mm.
And then we have some duck fat.
Duck fat?
Yeah, it should be pig fat or pork fat, but it's okay. It's very hard to get good pork fat anywhere here in the United States. But you can. Duck fat is a byproduct of slow cooking a duck. You get a lot of runoff, and it's full of the aromas of whatever herbs and other vegetables that you cook together with the duck. So it's full of stuff, as you can see, and it doesn't just taste of duck. It tastes of everything that went into cooking that duck.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it's really delicious.
Oh, it sounds good.
So let's see what we have here. We have duck fat, we have herring, we have egg, and we have pickled beet, which is a must. And that is according to my mother. We smear some duck fat on the bread.
We smeared duck fat on the bread. Oh, this looks good. Oh, it smells good.
Yeah, it's full of the goodness of the cooked duck. And then we fish a couple of fillet of herring out of the brine here. And we have copious amounts of raw onion
Okay.
with it.
Okay, I'm gonna load this up.
Then we top it off
It smells delicious.
with some hard-boiled egg.
Copious amounts of onion.
Yes.
Okay, tick.
And we finish off with a couple slices of pickled beet.
Also from the garden.
Yes, indeed.
Where are the eggs from? Did you say?
The eggs, that's one of the things where I had to succumb and go to the supermarket, because my friend Jane, who has supplied me with eggs for many, many years, got plundered by a bear earlier this year, who demolished her chicken coop and killed half the chickens. She fixed it. It came back 2 days later and finished the job, and she gave up.
Understandable.
The end of an era.
If a bear has set its heart on eating chickens in that location, you can be for sure he's going to be checking regularly. Oh.
Now, you may eat with your hands if you wish.
Okay, no, it's a knife and fork situation, okay?
But I was raised with a knife and fork.
As was I. Wow.
That is fantastic.
Such a great combination of flavors. And none of them too overpowering.
They're all big. That's why they don't overpower each other. I had a conversation with a friend the other day about food. She lives alone, as do I. My wife passed away recently. We did a lot of food together. And now I make food for myself. My friend said, I don't feel like cooking for myself. It's too much work. I don't feel I've deserved it. I just eat to maintain my energy level. I do not. To me, it's a way of connecting with all the other aspects of my life. The food is the end station of everything I do. It's as if everything I do, all the energies, all the purposes, whether I have a job where I get paid or not, whether I'm on my wages or whether I'm going out and working in the garden, it all comes down to one thing, and it is I want to put food on the table that I really desire. And the more effort I put into putting that food on the table, the more I desire it. And if I just snack or mindlessly putting food in my mouth, then it loses meaning. The further I get away from it, it loses meaning. The more automated or processed the food is, the less value does it have to me spiritually, mentally, emotionally. This little sandwich we ate here right now has a lot of meaning. And I invoke my mother a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I think about my mother a lot because she was a fantastic cook. And she laid the groundwork for my respect for food and my reverence for the act of eating and tasting. It's one of the most important passions and drives we have as humans, as animals, the act of eating. And I never wanted to make it be something secondary. I want it to be something that I put effort into it and I enjoy with effort.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's admirable to maintain that kind of focus. You know, the focus on the meaning of. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? Like, I think in the modern way people live their lives, it's easy to, and it's different for everyone, you know. But it's easy to find your focus become filtered into many different directions, and yeah, so it's really refreshing to hear that you have such a holistic approach to
I
what you put in your body.
I enjoy the process and I enjoy the act of eating. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
Ingesting food.
It's a helpful hobby for survival. But also enjoyment. Exactly, that's the point.
Yeah.
So should we have another one of these? Because I can't stop thinking about eating the next half of this sandwich. Is that okay?
Don't hold back.
Okay, I'm gonna do it.
But the drive to that passion is something that has always been in the back of my mind. And I've always explored the world with that in mind, with always trying to keep the focus of my life's activity, my work, my hobbies, the things I do in focus for how does it fit in with my connection with nature, with my utilization of nature, if you will. You know, what is my relationship with nature? Is it a romantic relationship? Is it a utilitarian relationship? Do I just want to go out and find, use, ingest, cut down trees for timber, go out and find mushroom because they taste good, or is it something deeper than that? I've always looked at the world in that respect. I also look at my actions and see how do they fit in with that worldview. And one of the things that happened early on here in California, when I was first traveling from San Francisco to British Columbia, where I was going to meet up with a friend at the University of BC in Vancouver, was I traveled up Highway 1, hitchhiking, and getting interrupted with rain.
And Highway 1, sorry to interrupt, that is the main highway. I'm sure everybody knows this, but it's the main highway that runs the whole way along the coast of the west coast of California and America, or is it just California?
California.
Okay.
I don't know if it's also called Highway 1 in Oregon and Washington. It might. It probably is. Just conversely, there's another Highway 1 back east that goes all the way down to Key West.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, there is. But one of the things that happened on my travel was that I stopped in at a place in Elk, a bar, the Oasis. It was a random stop. I had hitched a ride. We stopped in because it was time to take a break.
Yeah.
And it was evening, and we walk into the bar, and there on the wall was a picture of a fisherman, Charlie Li Fu. He was a Chinese immigrant, worked in the lumber industry, had a working accident, became a barber and a banker and a fisherman. Fished from a hand-built dory, long hand-built oars. A picture was taken of him and his fishing partner on a beach in Elk, standing next to the dory with an enormous amount of fish in front of them.
How many fish? Like, how many pounds would you guess?
A mountain of fish. Maybe 200, 300 pounds of fish. They were all caught with a hand wind, not rod and reel, hand wind only. Their equipment was very Spartan. A jug of water, hand wind, and then this mountain of fish. And then two very cool looking dudes.
I'm sure with smiles on their faces.
One of them was Charlie Lee Fu. He was legend around here. And when I saw that picture, it so fit into everything I wanted to be. And when I saw that picture, I said, I want to be that. And it was just a random thought, and it was just like I was pouring my heart into it, and then it goes away, it disappears. It kind of gets filed into my consciousness, and you know, as sitting there and never forgotten, but outside of the realm of what's possible.
Yes.
Except I made it possible by a series of coincidences. Maybe it's chance, maybe it's luck. People say luck is something you have to work hard for. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. There was a time when I believed in fate as some kind of a quasi-divine force of nature, because I was so lucky. It couldn't possibly be all coincidence, right? There is a meaning with this. Of course, it's all nonsense, but nonetheless, I ended up being those people in that picture.
Yeah, it must be, an amazing moment as well. It must have been some point along the journey after seeing that amazing photograph, feeling the inspiration that it created in you. How long down the line was it that you were able to realize, I have achieved what my wildest dreams and ambitions became when I saw that photograph?
Well, along the way, these possibilities opened up that put me one step closer. I can't tell you when the moment was where I could say, this is what I wanted. But I could say many times, this is what I want to happen now, because it's leading in that direction.
Yes.
So at some point it becomes clear that everything I'm doing from here on out is going to take me in that direction, to where I want to be. And so, life here in California, when I was a boat building apprentice, a series of things happened. I had finished a boat. I had wrapped up the work. My mentor and his family were visiting their family in Kansas. I was holding down the fort. I had completed a boat. For the first time in my life, I really had done something from A to Z on my own. Mm. Up until then, I'd always answered to other people's schedules. From my childhood and on, it was structure. It was school, it was this, it was work, it was duties. It was what other people had thought out for me. I made the choice of going to teachers college, yeah, sure. But you end up in a cohort of even age people. There's a curriculum, there's an agenda, here's the books, here's the tests, here's the paper, here's the graduation. Very structured. It's all set out, planned for you. You just have to obey, get out of bed in the morning, show up for class, and do your homework. Easy, structured. I call it the simple life. Mm-hmm. Then I end up in a situation where I can choose for myself. Being on the road in California set me free. It unmoored me from the straight and the narrow that a life in the school system has to afford. Here, traveling, I didn't answer to anything but what was in front of me. And building a boat came in front of me. The chance to build a boat from the bottom up, understanding the process all the way from A to Z with a generous and talented mentor, boat builder, helped me along the way. But otherwise, taking a hands-off approach and allowing me to discover my own mistakes and correct them and learn.
I guess that's a faster way to learn, really, isn't it? Actually, the sign of a good teacher is someone who will know when to guide you and know when to let you make your own mistakes.
Yeah, mistakes are necessary learning tools.
Yeah, effective.
Yeah.
So, while this was happening, and you were in this, dare I say, like a love affair with an idea of how to chase fishing lifestyle, how was the rest of your life developing in a kind of synchronized way with that? You know, because you're living a few miles inland, up in the hills above Elk, California. You are homesteading with your wife, although she wasn't your wife at the time.
No, that's right.
So
So I was living in Wallala at the premises of the boat builder,
okay, you were still there.
and I had completed this boat. It was one day in April of 1983. It was Saturday. I took the car. I had car keys. I had a van that I had access to. I took the car to Point Arena, which was about 15 miles away, to a bar there, the Sign of the Whale. And there was a live band. It was a very jovial place. It was hopping. Yeah, so I'm at the bar at the Sign of the Whale in Point Arena, and it's a loud affair, and there's dancing on the floor, and in files about 4 young women that makes everybody's head turn, including mine. And I catch sight of one of them, exchange glances, and what took place the rest of that evening was just magnetism. And her name was Karen Mathis. She was a chef at the inn in Elk. And we started a romance that night. And over the next several weeks, we saw each other frequently. She lit my heart on fire. And I think I lit her heart on fire too. She was a little careful, having just gone through a not very amicable breakup with an ex-husband. But I was persistent. And at the end of that summer, or at the end of July, August, I had finished boat number 2. I'd built 2 boats simultaneously, and I've been with the boat builder now for about 9 months. And that's a gestation period. It's a kind of a natural cutoff time. That's what I tell myself, because I just decided it's time to leave. And Karen and I went on a long road trip in her car. She was driving a Mazda RX-7 hot rod, rotary engine, Japanese station wagon. I put my backpack in the back of a station wagon. We set out on the Great American Road, Highway 1, all the way north and inland and down the deserts, and we just had a grand old time. And she invited me in to her house. Her house was a small cabin that she had built recently. She had built it together with a few friends. They started in March, and the house was wrapped up in October. And when I moved in with Karen, it had plastic before the windows. It had one functioning door. Didn't have any wiring or plumbing or any other things of that kind of nature. And you know what happened was that I discovered the things that I had forgotten that I wanted. Karen had all these things that I had forgotten that I wanted. No power, no plumbing, no phone.
They were things that you had thought previously you do not want those things.
I do not want those things. This was like starting at square one. This was starting at the bottom rung and learning to climb the fence where it's highest. This was a whole new chance to step back into a life that I had left off. I hadn't only found love, I had found a whole new life. It was a reset of sorts. It was kind of picking up where my childhood left off, but on my own premises. A little cottage, little cabin in the woods, completely swallowed up by forest, with no plumbing, no power, no phone, just nature, nothing else. It's like being naked. It's you are standing, looking around, saying, "What now?" It was a fantastic feeling. I couldn't believe I met a woman that shared that feeling with me.
Yeah. So what was the first step with the question, what now? What was the thing that took first priority?
Well, that first winter together it became very clear that there was too many trees.
Okay. Why?
Because when you are engulfed in forest and it's wet outside, we got a lot of rain in the winter here. We get 50 inches regularly, from about October to about April. It becomes very, very damp, cold to the bone. Mm-hmm. Everything gets damp. The house gets damp. Your clothes are not dry. Everything is full of moisture. It's rainforest. It's redwood forest. You find out pretty quickly this is not healthy. We need sun. We need exposure to the sky. So we laid a plan. We needed a little bit of elbow room, a little bit of space around us. There was a little clearing where the car was parked, and then there was a little well, and then there was a footpath into the house. I bought a chainsaw, and I started cutting down trees and shrubbery.
So I'm assuming at this point there was no space for any kind of vegetable growing, farming of any kind.
Nothing. And the soil here is very poor. Redwood forest soil is notoriously acidic and infertile. Very few species can really thrive in a forest that's dominated by redwoods. My urge was to build a shop where I could build a boat. That picture of Li Fu and his fishing pal from the Oasis in Elk was sitting in the back of my head and driving me. And I tell you, I was in a situation here. The year is 1983. I am 28 years old. I have boundless energy. I have all the time in the world. My head is exploding with ideas. And I have dawn to dusk to work, to do it. And so I get up at dawn, put on my clothes, get something really good to eat, and go slash the forest. Cutting it down. The good wood, the conifers, they were laid down to be milled. Okay. The tan oak was laid down to be cut into 18-inch rounds for firewood. The brush, likewise, was chopped up in 18-inch pieces, down to the smallest size. I utilized everything. And then, of course, there was the burnt piles of the biomass, the twigs and the leaves and the slash. So we made some burnt piles here and there. And otherwise, we laid down the trees in a way where we knew that we could actually get to them later.
Yes, it wasn't just like a big messy pile that would rot.
No, that was not the purpose. I borrowed a Alaska chainsaw mill from one of Karen's friends. Karen's friends were very eager to support her in her endeavor. Like 3 or 4 of her friends helped her build her house. And they did it very quickly. And when I came into the picture, these same friends, Karen's social sphere were very helpful, generous, and eager to help us along in our homesteading. And I think that that is not an unusual way of how things are done when you only have primitive means. The idea of a barn raising is an old concept where the whole community shows up. The timber is pre-cut and people know what they're doing because they've done it before. And in a couple of days, you go from having just timber laying on the ground to the structure of a barn is up and standing.
Mm.
So this thing about like offering up help to people who are starting from ground zero, that's a well-known, ingrained concept, I think, in the human mind. And I was very, very happy that I got good advice. I didn't know hardly anything. I was a school teacher. I didn't know how to. I was born and raised on a farm, yes. I had some knowledge about how to use hand tools, yes. But still, things specific to how to deal with Mother Nature around here is still something you had to learn. And I had good mentors.
So what were those things? Obviously you said about the heavy rain, and I'm guessing strong winds as well could be a bit of an element with the trees all nearby.
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, don't go out falling trees when it's blowing, right? And cutting down a tree, I mean, you got to know what you're doing when you're looking at a tree and say, oh, I'm going to cut down this tree. Well, okay, but you better like observe and read and do it right, because otherwise this stuff will kill you if done wrong. The world is full of stories about trees killing people. And you don't want that to happen. You got to go about it with your mind open and your senses on full alert. And then you got to listen to people who know better.
Did you ever have any close ones with cutting down all these trees?
I really don't. I'm very lucky that way, but I have heard stories and I have friends who were laid up because of moments of inattention.
Yeah.
And I am happy to say that I have all my limbs. I've never suffered any broken bones on that account, and no near misses, no trees falling the wrong way. That's a common occurrence. And then we started milling lumber from the trees that we had cut down. Karen and I got the hang of it, got quite good at it, prolific, productive. I started building this shop. I cleared enough space so that I could start mixing cement, laying a foundation, getting pier brackets set in concrete, milling beams for the floor. I had to get some paying work with local carpenters, contractors, cabinet makers, jobs here and there that could give me some money so I could go out and buy some lumber, because I couldn't mill it all. I had to buy some lumber. I had to buy some 2x6s, some 2x4s for the walls, for the roof, that kind of things. But all the beams from 4x4 and up, we milled ourselves.
And was there any regulatory stuff at that point with building properties, or or maybe that's a question I shouldn't be asking you?
You can ask. We ignored them all.
Okay.
Completely, 100%. There was never any talk about permits or anything. We knew that everything we did was illegal or outside of permits, the permit structure. Illegal, sure. It was.
Commas, yeah.
We kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. I remember there was one day I had a big fir tree laying out here. In the structure, I wanted an open ceiling here in the structure. I didn't want any posts to interrupt the room. Mm-hmm. It's not a very big room. It's 24 by 32. I wanted it to be as open as possible. It required a good strong beam to pull the two walls together so that they didn't get pushed out by the roof.
Yeah.
And so I remember one morning I set out with the Alaska Mill, Karen and I, and we went out and cut a 6x12 out of this Doug fir, and it had to be 24 feet long. You couldn't go out and buy a 24 feet 6x12 Doug fir at the lumberyard because it's not standard lumber.
Yeah.
It has to be special ordered. But I would never go out and buy such a thing. I wanted to cut it myself. So in the morning, I cut down the tree the day before. In the morning, we went out and we milled it. In the afternoon, 4 friends showed up. The walls were standing to this house, and then we put it up. And here it is. It's this beam that stretches. We're sitting directly under it, stretches from one wall to the other. And it was cut down, green. It was heavy, really, really heavy. We had to use some pretty ingenious lifting system to get it up there. But there it is, the 6x12.
Huh.
Milled and installed in one day.
Wow, that is that's remarkable.
Yeah, that was a sweet feeling.
Was there any, I mean, I guess you probably knew about this at this time. I know like this is a sidestep into woodworking territory, dare I say. But with a beam like that, you have to give it time for it to move. You know, wood after time, when it's like removed from a tree, it will adjust and move. Was that something which you were aware of, or it, you know, became an issue later on, or was it all fine?
It did move a little bit, but I had built notches into the walls where the beam was going to fit. And I wedged the beam in place after it was slipped into the notches, which were a little bit oversized.
Okay.
It was very limited how far that beam could twist. It twisted a little bit, but it couldn't twist a lot. I knew it was going to try and twist, but I didn't allow it to.
It was captive at that point.
Yes, it was. So after a while, I think in the year 87, I mean, this is a slow process. It starts with clearing land, getting a job, accumulating lumber, milling wood, making a foundation. It's called digging. It's called making concrete. It's called clearing brush. All of these things took place at the same time, just day in, day out. It was like fantastic work. The best. And I get a roof on, and I get the sides closed in with tar paper. It's a tar paper shack basically, and I have gotten some siding, but as soon as this place was closed in, I was ready to build a boat. I had in my spare time racked my brain to put all the knowledge together that Mr. Mobert from the boat shop in Wallala had taught me. Everything I learned from building those 2 boats in the shop, I put into the effort of designing and building my own boat. I've been so lucky during the same years where I was building this shop. It took me a couple of years to get the shop up, to fish in another rowboat that another friend here in Elk had built. This was a standard rowboat. This was a Swampscott dory, which is an East Coast model. It's probably a 100-year-old design also. A light version of the Banks dory. Light, yes, but still heavy. Light, yes, but way too heavy for just a couple of people.
Yes.
Too heavy to pull up and down on the beach, because it was a beach dory. Mm-hmm. Without any help from any winch or any kind of mechanical help. It was very heavy. Yet it was light. It was only like 250 pounds, which is still too much. There was many things wrong with this boat. There was many things right with this boat. No boat is perfect. Every boat is a result of compromise. The wrong compromises in this case. And I got a couple years of fishing in this rowboat, a couple of summers, where I got to observe its strength and its weakness. The size was right, about 20 feet length, 5 feet in the over the beam in the width.
Yeah.
Pretty perfect dimension. Seaworthy, stable, little clumsy under oars, little slow, little unresponsive in the waves, very sensitive to wind. So there was a whole series of things that were right, there was a whole series of things that were not right. And I tried to pay attention to, when we're sitting out there fishing, thinking, looking, observing, what should be done differently. So by the time this shop was closed in, I'd made these considerations. I'd made some drawings. I'd found some information, some books, some of the big brains of wooden boat building from back in time, who had thought everything through. And I absorbed all their knowledge so that I could do the right decisions when I stand in front of a problem that has to be solved. Building a boat that has never been built before. A whole new type that I call the dog hole dory. It's called a dog hole dory because the little coves here on this coast that are sprinkled up and down the coast of California all the way up to BC basically. Little coves carved out by the relentless surf of the Pacific Ocean into small inlets, not even inlets, but roundish coves. They're called dog hole coves. Why are they called dog hole coves? It has to do with, there's a couple of explanations. One of them was that it's so small that it's about the size of the circle that a dog would make in the grass when he walks around himself a couple times before laying down. Another one has to do with that every schooner back in the day that was hauling lumber to San Francisco had a dog on board the ship. And it's often foggy here on the coast. And when the ship approaches a cove where there would be like a shipping pier for loading lumber onto the schooner, when the schooner was approaching in the fog, the dog would be barking. And so some people say that is the origin of why these coves are called dog holes.
No.
I don't know which one is true. Maybe it's none of them. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
my dory would be roaming these dog hole coves. So I'm calling it a dog hole dory because that's what it's going to be doing.
That's what it continues to do now.
That's what it continues to do now.
So you had this vision, and as soon as this wood shop that we're in now was set up, you start building. How long did it take you to build your boat? Your first iteration of your boat, I should say.
The first iteration of my boat. It took me about a year.
Okay. Amongst doing other jobs and things that needed to be done.
That's right. Amongst also like maintaining some semblance of a job with a local cabinet maker. Very good job. A person from whom I learned a lot of woodwork on a little bit higher level than with a chainsaw. And it was very useful also for building this boat. The knowledge that he gave me. Different knowledge than a boat builder, than Mr. Mobert, Kenneth and Mary down in Wallala. The building was slow because I didn't have any power. So everything was done with hand tools. It was handsaw, hammer and chisel, axe, draw knife, hand drills. No power. And it was incredibly enjoyable.
But the way that you, I would imagine, wanted to do it as well.
Absolutely. Hand planes. I learned a lot of hand plane work with the boat builder in Wallala. He had very good hand tools. Finding the wood demanded that I get to the city a couple times. I had to go and find the highest quality wood. They say boat building, you don't need a lot of tools, you need the best wood in the world.
Okay.
Don't skimp on the wood. You don't need all the tools, doesn't matter. It's the wood that matters. I think I read that in a book by the grand old man of wooden boat building, Howard Chappell. So I took that to heart, and I convinced a friend of mine to take me to the city to visit a series of lumber yards. He was very knowledgeable, and he advised me, and I came home with all the lumber necessary to build a boat. And little by little, it came together, and it still, I can look at it and say, this is a pure and perfect example of beginner's luck. It's really difficult to put my finger on anything that this boat should be done differently. And the fact that she's still going strong. She was launched in 1987, and now we're talking 2023. And so here we have, well, that would be 36 years, I believe.
Yeah. Going strong.
Going strong. As good today as she was at launch time.
So the process of making the boat, that was about a year.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were absolutely dying to get into the ocean for fishing. Did you manage to coincide, I'm guessing you did, but coincide the finishing of the boat with the beginning of the ideal calmer Pacific Ocean for the beginning of fishing season?
Not at all. Launch date was December 2nd, 1987.
That doesn't sound ideal.
No, not at all. It was very cold. There was still a lot of people at the beach, and I launched it in Navarro River. It was a beautiful day. The wind was okay. Everybody who was there got a trip in the boat, and it was a fantastic experience. There were some other people there who had brought some of their boats along. There was a couple of canoes. It was a jolly affair. But it carried with it the promise that I had to be sitting on this boat without being able to fish for another half a year.
Yeah.
Because the ocean does not allow you to get into it in a rowboat until June. Sometimes July.
If you're lucky, yeah.
Sometimes July.
So the long wait happened, and then you arrived in the ocean. How was your fishing prowess at that point?
I had fished a couple of years in my friend Neil's rowboat.
You said yes.
And I had started at ground zero regarding fishing the Pacific Ocean. I started at ground zero in many places, fishing in Mexico, fishing in the Pacific Ocean down in Mexico, fishing in the mountain streams of Guatemala. Places like that where you don't know anything about what's going on. You don't know the biology, you don't know what fish is in there, you don't know what bait to use. These things, you just have to observe, listen, find somebody who has the knowledge, and start accumulating your own experiences little by little. But it always starts out you've been skunked. I mean, that's just how it is.
Which is humbling.
You know something about that, don't you?
Oh, you cut me deep, Ejler. I do. But I wonder, yeah, that was definitely a steep learning curve. But you were very patient with me, and you invited me back on the boat. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome. I actually fished. I didn't have a rod and reel in the beginning.
Really?
I did not. I had down in Mexico. I had fished from the beach with a number 10 tin can.
I remember you saying, yes.
With monofilament on it and a stick nailed into the can as a handle. And with enough lead, you can actually fling a hook 50 yards.
That's a long way. With a light line, I'm guessing.
Well, it's got to run off that can just right.
Yeah.
If it runs off that can just right, it pulls it off without any friction. And with the right technique of getting peripheral speed on the lead, it took a lot of practice, but we managed to fling it out past the surf line. I was in love with this tin can. So I made a new one here. And I fished over the side of the boat with a tin can and my hand line. I was a purist. I wasn't going to have any rod and reel. That only lasted up until I hooked a salmon by accident. I was fishing for bottom fish.
Yes.
A salmon took my hook. An enormous salmon. And this apparatus, the number 10 can, and 100-pound test monofilament, is just not finesse enough to fight a salmon.
Wow. That's a strong line, 100-pound test line.
100-pound test, yeah.
Wow.
I was not dicking around.
You're like, nothing is getting away from me.
No, right, you got it. Well, this salmon did. Yeah, it straightened the hook.
Really?
It did. It was an enormous fish. I don't know how big it was. 35 pounds. There's no give. There's not enough give. There's not enough flexibility. It's just hard against hard. And, when two forces like that meet, something's got to give. And it was the hook. And then I thought, wow, had I had a fishing rod in my hand and a reel with a drag set right, I would have caught that fish. So I retired my tin can, and I bought a second-hand fishing rod.
Do you still have the tin can here?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Oh, I'm going to have to take a photograph.
Yeah, I have the tin can. I have the rod. The rod is up there.
Okay.
Yeah, I never throw anything away.
We must, next fishing season, for sentimental purposes, take the tin can out.
Absolutely. It works really well. You just get the hook down to the bottom. Fish on. Up.
Just reel it up.
No discussion.
Brilliant. So, in this journey of your fishing, I'm kind of wondering, what's the next step? Like, you've got the boat together, you've got out on the ocean, the learning curve begins, fishing, and understanding the nuances of the dog hole fishing, or is it dog hole? Is that the right expression?
Yeah.
Was there a point where you're like, okay, now I'm bringing on all this fish?
Yeah.
Like, how do I process it
here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to do a good job, right? It's just like when you cut down a tree, you got to know what to do with it. You got to lay it in a place where you can get to it because you know what you're going to be doing with it. These things, coming home with an enormous amount of fish, holy Moses, what am I going to do with all this?
How much fish were you bringing? I mean, in general now, it's about 50 pounds of fish we'll pull in a day.
Yeah.
Or, just a few hours of fishing out there. Was it the same kind of volume then?
Yes, it was.
You had a limit. You, cut yourself off.
No. Sometimes we caught a lot more. Other times not. But on average, 50 pounds on a fishing trip.
So what do you do when you turn up back at the property with 50 plus pounds of fish that you need to figure out?
Well, there's two things that kicks in here. One of them was that Karen was the chef at a local inn. She ruled the kitchen. This kitchen had facilities, and Karen's friends, people in the area, they wanted fish. It was the same reason Li Fu was catching fish back in 1892. Now I'm here 100 years later. People still eat fish. And they know the difference between fish from the fish counter and fish that comes straight out of the ocean and is fresh. But nonetheless, the fish has to be kept cold. The fish has to be, from the time it's taken out of the water, be treated right so that it's worth eating. So the in-between station was Karen's kitchen facilities at the inn where she was a chef.
So that makes sense, because I was wondering, in a homestead that has no power or
Correct.
general facilities, how do you?
That becomes an issue.
Yeah.
How much can you really eat yourself, right?
And how much can you process if you don't have refrigeration?
Yeah. So I salted, I pickled, and I smoked. And then I gave away. And that went on for several years because we did not have any power here. One thing that becomes clear very quickly is that you got to do something with your fish guts. When you butcher a fish, at least half of it is offal.
Yeah.
It's heads and guts, skin, fins, bone. Things that you can't eat. What do? Well, you compost it. But that is easy if it's kitchen scraps from leftover from cooking.
Yeah.
But when you have out of 50 pounds of fish, half of it is scrap or is awful. It's gotta process. It has to process.
Yeah.
There was a lot of trial and error. For the longest time, I was breeding maggots.
Lots of them, I can imagine.
I was making flies. That was not good.
So what were you doing wrong to start with? I imagine making a lot of smell as well.
Yes. Yeah. Maggot infested fish compost is not a cozy affair at all. Not at all. Well, I learned to make a good compost pile. It demanded that there was some other soil, that there's soil involved.
Yes.
There's got to be soil involved.
It can't just be rotting carcass.
No, it's got to be. It can't also only be forest duff, which I used.
No, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. It doesn't bring the temperature up to a point where the flies stay away. Forest duff is good. It makes good compost in the end, but as a processing medium, it's not good. So I had to get soil. Soil meant digging and bringing in from elsewhere. I acquired a trailer. I still have it, by the way. It's now a boat trailer. It was a beautiful thing. It was like a Model T that had been modified. The front end of a Model T, where the steering arms had been welded to the axle to hold the wheels aligned with themselves, and then some clever hands with a welding apparatus had kind of made a box and a tow bar. So the axle is from a Model T.
Like you mean a Ford Model T?
Ford Model T.
Wow, you mean like the original mass production car?
That's correct.
From the Americas.
I think the Model A was the first. Or it was an A. It was a later. It wasn't a T.
Okay.
It was an A, I'm sorry.
Oh wow, that's an old car.
Yes.
Ha!
And the wheels are like, I believe that they're like 16-inch wheels, the big wheels. Very good suspension. Perfect suspension for a little trailer, especially a boat trailer. Anyway, I hauled a lot of dirt on that trailer. There was some houses being built down on the headlands. That was on the property of one of Karen's friends, one of the people who worked in the inn with her. And they were excavating. They were digging footing for the house. There's always piles of dirt when you build a house.
Yeah.
Things has to be moved around. Dirt has to be moved around. I had my run of that dirt. I was very careful not to import any poison oak or any such thing. Very careful, because we don't have any poison oak up here.
That would be a big mistake.
That would be awful, terrible. Karen was very paranoid about the presence of poison oak, and she would not allow any dirt to come up here unless she had been down seeing what's in the area. There was no poison oak where they were excavating. I did not import any poison oak.
That's a wise choice.
Gotta have your eyes and your ears open, otherwise you can make mistakes that are just gonna haunt you for the rest of your life.
I can only imagine if you just created a giant pit of poison oak here. This is
That would be
definitely
awful.
a sour twist to your dream location.
Yep. You gotta watch your steps. But I got the medium, good soil
Yes.
for the compost, and that became the backbone of my gardening. In the beginning, it was very small. It was some raised beds that immediately got invaded by redwood roots.
Oh,
So the first year's crops was fantastic, you know. Next year's crop, not so much. Third year's crop, like almost non-existent. And then I dig down, and it's like one big thicket of redwood roots.
really?
Yeah, they invade.
They get in there for those nutrients.
Yes, they do.
Those delicious fish nutrients that you're putting in there.
Oh yeah. That redwoods is like they don't stop, and they can travel a long ways.
Thank you.
So these are like the childhood diseases of gardening in the redwoods, gardening in the forests. These rude awakenings.
So you've got that compost, and talk me through, because I am very curious. Like, this has been a definite. I mean, I'm sure for many people who come fish with you and experience the process of working on fish once coming back from the bay down at the ocean. And we'll go into a lot of detail about this, I'm sure, later on. And we will. This is a slight bit of foreshadowing, but we will in the future do some more detailed podcasts about like the nuances of what makes fantastic compost, or like how to process like actual hot fish guts filled compost to make absolute rocket fuel for vegetables and all those kinds of things. But so I guess like in a like a quick overview of how it would work, what you formulated is rolling it, like bringing in fresh soil.
Yeah.
You know, and what about bears? Would they not raid the situation, or what was the?
Well, back until about 10 years ago, there was no bears in this area. There was once upon a time when Europeans first came to this coast. This was ruled by bear and mountain lion as the alpha predators of the area. But white people have a way of like killing alpha predators right away, and bears and pumas were simply wiped out. And if any bear or puma ever showed up, there were people who were very knowledgeable in how to track them down, corner them, and kill them. Right here, right now. 24 hours later, bear's dead.
From the things I read as well from long ago, I think I read the Journal of a Trapper. I'm not sure if you've read that.
I have not.
If you haven't, then I'll lend it to you. It's very good. What's his name? Russell, I think is the name of the... Osborne Russell, maybe? But the thing's interesting is conventional thinking nowadays is like wild game animal, the most coveted wild game animal in this country is the deer, is what people think of when you think wild game. That's usually the deer is the first thing that springs to mind. But actually back in the day it was bear that was the most coveted source of meat, more so way over than the lowly deer. And maybe that's why it survived more, you know, like why the population when it was at the point of being wiped out. But yeah, bear the way that this trapper would write about bear being so delicious. It's clear that was in the hearts of people at that time. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, I interrupted you. Can continue. Sorry.
No, you were asking what's with the bear. And in the beginning, when my compost piles were like way less than ideal, the bear was never a problem. It was flies and maggots, raccoons. Raccoons were ruling. This was raccoon country. I don't know what happened to the raccoon. The raccoon has basically disappeared Now it's fox that is like the medium predator in this area. But the bear is back because the bear is now considered a desirable part of the fauna, the ecosystem of the forest, as it should be. It has become a menace, however, because it's become a little bit too familiar or too comfortable with close interaction with humans.
Absolutely.
And with their environments. That be as it may. I haven't had any bear taking my compost apart, even though I sometimes put 25 pounds of fish guts in 3 times a week. And it has to do with the way I mix it in. In the bin there's 3 areas. It's a 3 feet by 4 foot enclosure in cinder blocks. Cinder blocks are not packed tight together in order to allow oxygen to kind of like seep in through the pile.
Okay.
But every time I bury a new batch of fish guts, I dig down deep and agitate the last deposit of fish guts, which is now like completely rotted apart and hot and steamy. So I dig down and I agitate and aerate that area, and then I put in the new fish guts and fresh soil. And it ignites immediately. It gets really hot very quickly. An hour later, the temperature in that new fish guts is up to like 120, 130 degrees.
130 degrees.
It gets really hot. It cooks very quickly. It turns very quickly to a substance that a bear would not consider food. It gives off ammonia fumes, and ammonia is simply not a substance that bears are keen on. So when they smell,
or humans probably.
No, nobody. So when they smell the compost, they don't think food, and they stay away. And they have never broken into my compost. And it's hot enough to where flies wouldn't try. And I bury it deep enough. I got like 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of fresh soil on top of the last burial, the last deposit. That's enough for a fly to never be able to get in.
Yes.
If there's too much forest duff, which I used to use, they can crawl in. But this is soil and sawdust and forest duff and other such things. It's a really good medium. It's not compact. Oxygen should be allowed to penetrate it, but it's also not loose enough to where flies can get into it.
Yeah. So the bears don't get in and the flies don't get in.
That's right.
The raccoons tried for a while, but not successful anymore because of the kind of fortified structure that you created, I'm guessing.
Yeah. The raccoons, likewise, they smell ammonia and they don't do it.
Okay, good.
They don't get into it.
So you didn't have any problems then with that compost, which is I still for some reason find it hard to get my head around. I mean I understand the ammonia thing, but it's like when I've witnessed the sheer amount of meat that's getting pushed in there, it's always hard for me to get my head around the fact that it's just not an issue. But it's it's magical almost in a way. But one thing I will ask is, okay, so the bears aren't a problem for the fish guts, but then surely at some point you must have been growing fruit trees. There weren't fruit trees there naturally. Did you plant fruit trees on this property?
Yes, I did.
And then at what point did that become a wake-up call with the bears? Did you have to do anything to keep them away?
Oh my God, I've had to capitulate. I've lost many trees. The biggest heartbreak was this peach tree that we planted about 15 years ago. That's before the bears were really rampaging the neighborhood. And it was growing. It was sitting 1 peach, then 5 peaches, then 20 peaches, and it was delicious. And it was a beautiful tree. And then one summer it was loaded, and they were big. They weren't these small little hard ones, They were like big, nice peaches. And they were just about getting ripe when I come out one morning and that peach tree is laying down and stripped.
Just pushed over.
Pushed over. Stripped. That's when I realized that. And it was fenced in. that we have a problem. We have a real problem. And over the next several years, I was lucky if I got any apples at all. There was one apple tree that was so big that the bear couldn't get all the apples.
Really?
Luckily.
Those carrots, I just snuck a carrot. It's so tasty. It blows my mind sometimes as to
What's
how
that?
Those carrots are so tasty.
I know.
Snuck a cheeky carrot there. Just every time I eat one of your carrots here, I'm just astounded at how such a simple thing can be so tasty.
I know. It's a far cry from
Supermarket.
the supermarket. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we were talking about the fruit tree being completely laid down. Is that right?
Yeah, it was laid down. It wasn't the first fruit tree that got completely destroyed. All the way.
So, like that tree didn't survive
No, that tree did not survive.
after a number of years.
Yeah.
Oh,
After having guided it through its tender childhood and protecting it from deers and watching it, I mean, peach blossoms are just so beautiful, you know, and the tree had this aura around it of beauty and it wanted to give, and we wanted to eat, and we never got to do that.
I'm sure you were waiting, anticipating, watching the fruits ripen.
Yes.
As was the bear, I'm sure, in the distance.
And they managed to get them just before they're ripe. Other trees met sad demises. We lost 2 apple trees all the way because they were broken. They were simply mangled all the way to the bottom. 2 trees I could prop back up. They were laid all the way down. I could prop them back up and put some supports under them, and I made them get root hold again, and they survived and thrived. One later on got so mangled the second time that it too died. And had 3 trees left out of 12, I believe.
All of them have been systematically wiped out by bears.
Correct.
Oh, I guess it is what it is.
Yeah. I don't want to hate the bear. But sometimes when you come out and see a tree massacred like that, you get murder in your heart. You do.
And also,
It's nothing compared to my friend Jane, though, who comes out and sees her chicken coop destroyed and her chicken dead. That's more of an emotional impact.
Mm-hmm. I wonder also, though, there must have been in the time that you were, however many years it's been that you've been here, attracting animals onto the property with various things that you're growing creates opportunities to harvest meat.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't shied away from eating what's, commonly classified as vermin.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, the possum shows up and plunders your strawberry patch, right? And you're thinking, if you do that again, I'm going to eat you. So it does it again, and then I eat it. If you ate my strawberries, I'm going to eat you. And it was interesting to butcher and eat a possum. They're not a terribly appetizing animal. Not to look at, not
Yes.
to butcher. There's nothing charming about a possum. Although the way it is so obliviously walking through the world as if there was no care at all. And if there is anything to be afraid of, it just lays down and plays possum. Plays dead.
Really?
Yes, they do. If they're cornered and in danger, they play dead.
And that must work in some capacity.
Yeah.
Is it? I can't understand why.
It must work. I mean, we had a black lab dog for many years, and he would corner possums, and we go out and Jack, what do you got there? Oh, he's got a possum. So the possum is laying there, right, and possum's dead, and Jack's like chewing it, gumming it, not biting it, just nuzzling it, do something, damn it. It's like as if the dog wants this animal to be alive so that it can like harass it some more. But the possum is laying there stone cold dead. And then Jack loses interest and walks away and goes and does something else, takes a dump or whatever happens, and then comes back to the possum. Possum's gone. Not dead at all. Just plain possum.
How funny.
It is funny.
I'll be curious to see how well that works against an animal that's really hungry.
Well, it didn't work with me, right? Okay, Jack's got a possum. Okay, possum, I'm gonna eat you.
Thanks for the act.
Yeah. But possums, for all their kind of like ratty look and kind of like innocent or harmless look, they got the biggest fangs, inch for inch, of the entire like animal world.
Really?
Really. I have a possum skull. Would you like to see it?
I would love to see it.
I'll bring it.
So this, it's 2 skulls you're showing me.
Yeah, I'm just showing them for comparison. Here we have a fox.
Okay. May I hold it?
Yes,
Okay, so you've actually glued it in position.
I did.
Yeah, that's an amazingly immaculate skull that you've got here. This thing is spotless. Top jaw and bottom jaw.
Yes.
Not a single tooth missing. Yeah, okay. So this is a fox.
And this is the possum for comparison.
Whoa, look at that.
Look at those fangs. They're worthy of a saber-toothed tiger.
That's vampiric.
That's insane. You can't see it from the outside of it when you look at a possum's face. It doesn't betray the existence of these daggers.
Yeah, you don't get that impression at all.
But why an insectivore, which is it's kind of it eats everything.
Yeah.
It eats anything and everything, but it likes to eat insects that it digs out and catches on the surface of the ground and eats fruits. Why these big fangs? It's kind of wondrous.
Absolutely. I'm just taking a little video of this. This is... they're huge, these fangs. It's like 2 to 3 times the size in scale. A similar size skull. I can see why you chose the fox and the possum. But yeah, this is enormous. Very, very cool though. And an interesting shaped skull, almost similar to a bear in a way, like a ridge across the top of the head.
That's right. And it also has a brain cavity where there's like no room for anything.
There's no room for any brain.
There's no room for any brain. Unlike the fox, which has a very well developed brain cavity.
Could explain why the lay down and play possum strategy, it seems to be the only one available. It's not a multitasking situation going on in that brain box.
It also has extremely tough skin when you butcher it. It's quite a bit of work to butcher a possum. And there's not a whole lot of meat in it. It's not an agile, swift animal. So the return is a little bit maybe not worth it. And all in all, it's not, as I said earlier, an appetizing animal. So eating a possum is something that is pretty low on my
Yes.
food list.
But definitely not off the list.
They're not, no. The only thing that's ever been off the list that I have yet to eat is skunk.
Really?
Yeah, I have had the opportunity. I had a dead skunk, a young skunk before the scent glands were fully developed. So it actually smelled pretty good. I still thought, nah, not gonna eat skunk.
Not gonna try that.
No.
Ah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know, it's disappointing, eh?
No, it's not disappointing. I'm just surprised, given the stories that I've heard from you.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
insatiable curiosity about eating
Food, yeah.
animals.
I eaten everything else here, but not skunk.
So, no animal was safe here apart from skunk. We've established that. You also, I mean, you were using your boat for fishing. We're kind of jumping around a little bit.
Yeah, that's
here,
fine.
but
Yeah.
I'm curious, there was a time when you were spearfishing and getting abalone as well. Was that
Yeah.
okay? Because abalone was available until only the last 10 or 15 years. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. When I started diving for abalone, you could take 5,
Okay.
which is a lot of abalone. Abalone fishing was a winter activity, spearfishing also, because in the summer I had the boat.
So would you spearfish from the shore then? You just swim out from the beach?
Yeah.
If it's a bit rough, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, if it's rough I don't.
You wouldn't go out?
No, then it's murky. It's difficult to spearfish when it's murky. You can catch abalone, you can get abalone when it's murky, it doesn't matter. You can feel your way around. But no, you look for the good days.
Which
It
there
did-
are few and far between, but there are
There
those
are.
few days.
Like today,
Yes.
fishing is over. The ocean is calm. The sun is out. The visibility is probably fantastic.
Yeah.
And you can spend a whole hour just laying in and wallowing in the surface and get baked on your backside by the sun. It's wonderful. It's a fantastic thing to do. I love it. Spearfishing took a real blow in 1994 when there was a wholesale deregulation of fishing inside a 1 mile line that had previously been off limits, and it was opened up for commercial fishing, and the live fishermen took over that area. And live fishing means you catch fish on shallow water, you bring them up into the boat, they don't suffer hyperbaric trauma from traveling big water column because you're fishing on shallow water. You can put them in a live well in your boat. You can give them over to a truck that will haul them in seawater to the city where it's sold in the Asian markets primarily.
Okay.
Very lucrative, pound for pound. Much more so than like fish that has been taken with a dragnet or long lining.
Mm-hmm.
It's also more work intensive, of course. It's you gotta treat these fish right.
Mm-hmm.
So the live fishing took a real toll on the near shore ecology by basically removing all the alpha predators in the fish world from near shore and shallow water environment. And so all of a sudden, from one year to another, you go out spearfish, and you could be in the water for half an hour and not see anything that was worth spearing.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you couldn't dive down without seeing fish that was worth spearing. It was like, should I take that or should I take that? Should I take both? No, it's too much. Let me find the right one. None of those. That one over there. It's ridiculous. The ecosystem was like maximum until the live fishermen came in. They destroyed it. It got destroyed in a profound way that I think we're living with the repercussion of that disturbance of the ecosystem, the near shore environment. It's part of why things are so awry and have gone so amok right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think is that commercial exploitation of a very sensitive and very finite part of the ocean ecology.
And when did that stop?
It has never stopped.
Oh, so the live fishing is still happening?
It's still going on right now.
I didn't know.
Yes.
Okay, so that explains why things are still happening.
They are.
And do you think that also affects the abalone situation?
Well, it has reverberation through the entire food web. Things are complicated. It's like we're talking about an organism. You can take an organism and chop it up into small segments and understand them chemically and physically. Sure, absolutely you can. But you can't take an organism and chop it up into only things you can understand physically and chemically and say, oh yeah, that's the whole organism there. Let's cure it. No, that's not how it works. The whole organism is very difficult to understand. But we do know that when we screw up one thing really radically, it affects the whole picture.
Yeah.
In an unpredictable way. And right now, I believe we are talking about a multifaceted negative impact on the nearshore ecosystem that has come home to roost now in the mass die-off of abalone and their, the kelp, their ecosystem, their forest.
Yeah, and I guess the huge invasion of purple urchins as well. Like there's this huge imbalance everywhere, right?
It's all tied together. But in which way? We are pretty much too dumb to figure that out. We're not too dumb to destroy, we're too dumb to fix.
Fingers crossed, one day it can be resolved. I mean, yeah. Would you say that you've seen general? I mean, you are saying this, but I'm asking you outright. In the 30-something years that you've been fishing these waters from your boats, would you say, I don't have any frame of reference because when I go fishing with you the last few years, we're putting up 50 pounds of fish regularly, and it's not usually an intense labor to do so. But would you say it's gotten harder, or the quality and the number and the size of fish is just definitely on a downward trajectory?
Well, I can't answer that with one sentence. In the nearshore environment, things have changed radically.
Mm-hmm.
Out to depth of about, say, 50 feet.
Okay.
From there on and out, it's a different ecology. It has not changed in any remarkable way. Some years are a little bit meager. Some years are a little bit more productive. This year and last year has been incredibly productive. There's been a lot of bait fish, a lot of feed from all the way from phytoplankton, the very lowest rung of the food chain or the food web, up until whales. Everybody has been numerous, happy, well-fed. It's a joy to behold. Bird life has exploded. They've had very good broods a couple of years in a row, surviving chicks. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
And when you have been looking at the ocean, you haven't been able to ignore the enormous amount of pelicans we've seen this year.
The last 2 years,
Yeah.
I'd say, right? I hadn't really seen. I'd seen pelicans before, but now there was definitely a transition where there are moments when you're walking along the coast and there are just pelicans on every rock.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
And there's been plenty feed for them all.
Mm.
And they had very, very successful breeding a couple of years in a row.
Well, long may it continue.
Not bloody likely. Things have cycles. They come and they go.
True.
I mean, we have a lot of bait fish all the way from needlefish, sardines, anchovy, herring, mackerel. Just colossal quantities. The biomass is unfathomable all the way up and down the coast. You look over the side of your boat, bait fish everywhere. That is because of, well, who knows? It's nutrients. Where do they come from? Some say it's the forest fires that has brought so much airborne ash out and dumped it on the ocean that it has fertilized the ocean.
Interesting.
And has triggered a shockwave of production through the food web for several years in a row. Could be.
That's interesting as a theory, especially if there have been less fires in history because of,
Yeah.
fire suppression,
Right.
which could then, I guess you would potentially claim that would mean less nutrients over a great number of years has kind of been getting to the ocean in general, and now it's a bumper.
Now it's a bumper.
Well, yeah, that's...
So has the fishing changed? I would say no. I still catch an average of 50 pounds of fish on a fishing trip. I fish very differently now. And I still catch about the same amount of fish. It's very generous ocean out here. It's full of fish. I love it. It's fantastic.
So do I. So I have to say then, and forgive me, we're jumping around a little bit, but the thing that we had talked about beforehand, which is, all of this fish, this large quantity of fish that you bring in the summer over a period of maybe 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And then your learning of how to process this vast number of flesh and fish guts and heads and all that kind of stuff to make this killer compost. Tell me about the gardening side of your homesteading, because that's a whole kind of part. We've talked a little bit about the fruit trees and their vulnerability to the wildlife. But tell me about your journey growing vegetables, because you must have started somewhere. But now I see you and I taste this carrot that I've taken from this bowl on this table, and it is, I can easily say, the most delicious carrot I've ever eaten in my life, and it always surprises me when I eat that carrot or those carrots that you have in the garden. And so tell me about that process of coming here and then knocking trees down, and then you've got to be at some point, you came from farming.
I did.
So you must have been comfortable in some aspect with that.
Oh, absolutely. That was ingrained in my entire childhood and early adult life, and it became toil, right? It became something really profoundly unattractive.
Mm-hmm.
Farming life, to me.
Yeah.
That's why I decided I'm going to go into the book world. But when I came here and I found a new life with my wife Karen, a like-minded person, and we were in sync, then I could take up from that point where country life and farming and oneness and closeness with nature, of that intensity, that intimacy, from when it was attractive, from when it was play with mother in the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something fantastically desirable about that picture. It's so pastoral and ancient. So being able to do it on my own terms of, how much effort do I want to put into this? What is the purpose? It's not to make money. It's not to bring things to market. It's not to raise a certain amount or we'll starve to death. It's not a part of the economy per se. It's not like I choose it as a livelihood. I wanted to stay away from that. I do not want to be a slave to Mother Nature to the point where I had to declare war on nature.
For a larger scale.
Right.
In order to be profitable in some capacity.
Yes. My family in Denmark they were almost all farmers. Almost all farmers. And I can tell you, it makes people angry, farming. It makes them at war with nature. It makes them not good people. I know that the image is not like that. The farm life is so healthy. Farm life is wholesome. Farm life is something to be desired. Yeah, no, not true. I think farmers are in general not very attractive personalities.
Interesting.
because they are at war with nature.
I can also imagine, and forgive me, this is an outside perspective. I don't, I'm just speaking for someone who doesn't really know about farming, just seeing it from far away. But it's always looked like an incredibly hard existence. You are constantly working. It's a relentless series of tasks that will always be there, and you, from dawn until dusk, I always get the impression that you may be doing it in a mechanized fashion, but that isn't necessarily, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you are just increasing your yield versus your amount of working hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It is true, all of what you're saying. Farming on this scale, on the gardening scale, in the beginning, necessarily it was like very limited because I didn't have any areas. And the areas that I developed got invaded by redwood roots. So what the hell do you do? When redwoods are cut down, they sprout again from the rootstock.
Yeah.
When you cut down a fir tree, it doesn't sprout again. Or a pine. Redwoods do. They sprout directly from the ground up. They have an enormous root system and they have no greenery. And then all of a sudden, they have this big root support and they can really pump some biomass into the new sprouts. They grow very, very rapidly. And they travel, the roots will travel far. So the only way to deal with that is to get rid of the roots. So if you decide to be a farmer in the redwoods, you have to do something about the redwoods. You have to do something about the roots. You got to cut down a tree, yeah, but then you got to grind the stump.
Okay.
You got to hire a stump grinder. A guy who comes in with a piece of semi-heavy equipment and set up shop right next to the stump. And he starts a humongous noise-making vertical chainsaw-like apparatus with carbide teeth that goes 8 feet from side to side and slowly reaches into the ground.
It's lower and lower.
Lower and lower into the ground. And cuts through root, dirt, everything, anything, and pumps out a steady stream of duff and crunched up wood and dirt and leave a big pile behind, and now the redwood is gone.
No chance of coming back.
Well, it depends on whether the stump grinder got all of the living part of the root system. If it didn't, then it will sprout again. So we had to put some money into that. Have a stump grinder come in and remove some redwood stumps that were invading our growing space. That's all right. You gotta break eggs to make omelet, they say. And as I was making compost, quite a bit of it. I bought a load of topsoil from some reputable people. Here comes 10 yards of topsoil, and built some raised beds and started gardening at a little bit bigger scale.
So what year was this? How long into this homesteading life did you decide to do this?
Well, a thing happened in 1988, and it had to do with that the county declared war on backwoods hippies who had built their dwellings without permits.
So this is 8 years after.
That's about 7 years after Karen had this place built.
Okay.
It was about 6 years after I showed up on the scene here.
Okay.
And I see this as the last gasp of the country gentry, the people who originally thought that this is all ours and we rule this place. We sit in the Rotary clubs, and we sit in the board of supervisors, and on the town councils, and the fire departments, and the police, and the sheriffs, and we sit on it all. Up until the time came when the hippies actually began to be majority. I think that they slammed the door one more time by issuing so-called amnesty for people who had built illegally out in the woods, built without permit.
Yes.
So the rules were, you can apply for a special permit, a Class K permit that will allow you to slide some of the rules that otherwise would be applied to a new building. You can either do that, or you can face a stiff fine when we find you eventually, because we're going to come looking for you. And when one of the supervisors, county supervisors, who was a co-sponsor of the bill, she was kind of a flinty entrepreneur type. When she was confronted with the simple fact that her ordinance would shift something like $5 million in 1988 money from the poorest inhabitants of the county to the wealthiest inhabitants of the county, like the people who were supplying all the hardware and the piping and the gravel and the heavy equipment and trucking and all of that. That there was going to be a shift of money upwards.
Yeah.
She said, I don't care. And by the way, you'll probably thank me for it in the long run. And that's taught like somebody who only really tolerates that people live the way she does, you know, in probably a tasteless suburban home that has a nice lawn. Anyway, we'll take a break again.
Yeah. So
Yes,
the money was going upwards.
the money was going upwards. It was going from the likes of us who was living at the lowest possible level of consumption that you can imagine. I mean, imagine not having power, plumbing, or phone. You can't consume anything. Gas for the car, kerosene for the little lighting that we had, some propane once in a while for the cook stove. That was it. There was no consumption. So what happens then is that in order to apply for Class K, you have to have a flush toilet. So they set a series of rules. You have to have a flush toilet. You have to have guardrails on your staircases. You have to have certain clearing under the house, and there's just a whole series of, this is what you need to do. In order to do that, in order to have a flush toilet, you have to have water and you have to have power. You have to have plumbing.
Simple double whammy
And
requirement.
power. You do. You have to spend a lot of money. Mind you, this property was cleared only enough so that there was enough sun on the house so it didn't mold in the winter. And there was enough clearing around the house, around the shop here, so that I had a little bit of elbow room around it. There was no room. In order to have a flush toilet, you have to have a septic system. You have to have a septic tank and a leach field.
Yes.
In order to have a septic tank and a leach field, you have to have clear space. In order to have clear space, you have to call in the bulldozers.
Yeah.
Bulldozers are big, heavy, very expensive things to operate. So over the next 2 years, we probably dropped about somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 in 1988 money.
Wow.
Into reaching the required standard for Class K permit.
I have to interject with a question though. I'm just curious. What was your bathroom situation before? Were you just going off into the woods and digging a hole?
For a few years, it was a hole with a couple of boards on top of it.
Okay, classy.
Yes, it was very simple,
Yeah. I mean,
very easy.
good enough.
Yeah. Then I thought, in the winter, it would be nice to have a roof. So I made a roof, a privy, a classic privy.
And this is going back to the context of 50 inches of rain over the period of maybe 6 months.
That's right.
A roof would be a luxury.
A roof would be nice. So we had a nice privy, it was perfect good. It was I dug it really deep, so it never filled up.
Perfect.
Yeah. We call it a perma-shitter. It was deep enough to where it just never filled up. 2 people couldn't fill it up. It kind of like disappeared into Mother Earth.
It just got absorbed.
Just disappeared.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do any processing or anything. It's a big enough hole.
None.
The earth takes care of it.
No processing. But that was no longer acceptable, so we had to have a flushing toilet, and so we had to go all the way down back to clearing land, digging trenches, laying pipe, bringing a septic tank, bringing a power pole, stringing PG&E cables, laying pipe under the house, build a bathroom. A lot of work, a lot of money. All our money gone. So now we have power. Now I have lights in the shop. Now we can work 24 hours a day if we want to. Got ourselves a refrigerator. Now we don't have to rely on Karen's job for fish processing either.
So it was a forced transition, but a positive one in the long run.
It was a forced transition, but that flinty entrepreneur on the board of supervisors, I had to reluctantly say that she was probably right. It was a good thing. It was a new situation that opened up a whole series of new possibilities. I've done enough work with axe and draw knife and handsaw and chainsaw and hammer and chisel and blah blah blah, etc., etc., etc. I was ready to take the next step.
Should we pause at that moment? It seems like a great opportunity to
Let's do that.
take the next step in our food. So, talk me through this delicious.
Okay, this is a very simple dish that we're going to eat here. We have an apple, a slice of apple. We're not going to eat the apple now. The apple belongs to a different dish. We have cucumbers and we have tomato and we have basil pesto.
Oh, that looks good.
And then we take a cracker and we smear a little pesto on. And then we put a little tomato and cucumber.
Oh, that looks good.
And then we take salt from the ocean.
Aha.
Just a little sprinkle.
Okay.
And a dash of coarse ground pepper.
I'm going to stop videoing because I want to make my own. This looks really good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Mmm.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad that these apples survived the gauntlet against the wildlife.
This year the bear has had so much huckleberry to eat out in the woods that it hasn't given a shit about my puny little fruit trees. It hasn't found it worth the visit. Because the huckleberry production this year is second to none.
Yeah.
Just enormous.
Everywhere. And they're so big. It's like the huckleberries are the size of blueberries.
An enormous production of biomass.
Yeah. I was wondering about that because I've seen a huge number of bear poops out in the woods in the wild where I've been, and I mean it's normal to see a lot of huckleberries in the poops anyway, but they're just everywhere. These huge shits confettied with huckleberries all over. They just form this deep purple colour.
Yeah.
Where they are just dyed. It's clear they're not eating much else, the bears.
It is really impressive.
So in a way, it's nice that your garden's had a bit of a break, courtesy
My
of
garden,
Mother Nature.
I have not been visited by the bear, but a bear was sighted a quarter mile east of me yesterday.
Okay.
A very healthy looking, full-grown male.
So we were talking about the process of becoming a gardener
Yes.
in the homesteading sense.
Well, we have been, we had accepted the terms of being, getting a Class K permit.
Yes, that's right.
And we went through the motions over a period of 2 years and cleared like better part of a quarter acre of forest in order to establish a leach field for the septic system. But we cleared a lot more than that because we wanted to put in a bigger garden and we wanted to push the redwoods out of the way so that we wouldn't have to struggle with root invasion, because that's just a losing struggle. I don't want, as I said, I don't want to be at war with the nature. I don't want to be struggling against the forces. It's hard enough to be a farmer. It's hard enough to be a gardener. There's so many X factors. Having the redwood, the hungry, ever hungry redwood as your competitor is a losing battle. I don't want to put in the work and stand with a losing hand.
Yeah.
Because it is a lot of work. And a lot of people question if it's worth the effort. I understand the question. The answer to me is easy. That it is worth the effort. Even such lowly products such as a head of cabbage. I mean, what's a head of cabbage? $2? Something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Hard to find anything cheaper than a head of cabbage. I've grown cabbage this year. I don't know what kind it was. I got it from a friend who is really good at raising seedlings, so he gives me a 6-pack once in a while. Fantastic cabbage. I mean, there's no competition. It's the same with the carrot. Carrot is a lowly vegetable. It's inexpensive at the supermarket. But you put a carrot like this in your mouth, and you will never think about the carrots the same way again. There's no comparison.
It's even funny because I know that's absolutely true. I think we successfully managed to pull one carrot out of the ground this year.
Yeah.
It was tasty, but it didn't. Yeah, it didn't even come close to the flavor of this.
I have a great big advantage in my fish compost. There's no doubt about it.
That's true. So,
we expanded our garden because a series of events took place. My wife quit a job at her inn because of for a variety of reasons, and she became a caterer. She was making food for people privately. All of a sudden, a garden became a much more important and keystone factor in our economy, in our rural life. It wasn't just a matter of like eating good. It was a matter for Karen to be able to cater to her customers the best possible. There's always that quest, the best possible. And the garden became ever larger because Karen consumed more and more. She is a famous chef, she was probably known by everybody up and down the coast, has fed many thousands of people, and for good reason. She always worked from the best of ingredients, the best that was available in the situation. Not all from the garden, of course, but as much as possible. And I was a willing contributor, and the compost, the fish compost, and the garden space, and the consumption through Karen's catering business, it found a kind of a harmonic equilibrium. The nutrients that came from the fish went into the ground, went into Karen's business, went into making money. That was running smoothly and sweetly.
Yeah.
Right up until Karen got hit by disease and her business closed down, and now the garden has found its a different equilibrium, one that fits me and my economy of giving. This is a peculiar economy to be a part of, and it's very old. I have a lot of fish. I give away a lot of fish. When you give away fish to a friend or to a loved one, there's no need to reciprocate. You don't expect anything in return. There's no need to maintain a balance. But when you establish a social network among people who love fresh fish instead of fish from the fish counter, and if that's your only touching point with that group of people, other than maybe their neighbor, maybe you've known about them, they're a member of the community, you know who they are, but now they're eating your fish. Now you have tied some strings together with those people. That kind of giving sooner or later demands balance, an equilibrium of sorts, reciprocity. And so people give back. And I happened to make a list of things that was just loosely taken from memory about what I have gotten in return.
Okay.
Whiskey, very good whiskey, by the way. Honey, wine, beer, bread, hard cider, kimchi. By the way, that's all from the same person. He's a master of fermenting.
Wow.
He has gone out of his way. He has gone to Normandy to learn how to make hard cider. He has learned to make kimchi from Korean people. His beer, he went to Norway to track down a yeast that has been inherited from generation to generation among Norwegian farmers for over 1,000 years. A yeast. Smuggled it back into the United States and made ale from that yeast, and it is some of the best beer that's ever brewed on this planet. There's no better beer brewer than this guy. He doesn't just get my fish. He gets to go out in my boat also and fish from a dory. Yeah, we have a long and very fruitful relationship in that regard. Persimmons, peaches, apple juice, cheese, the goat and sheep cheese we ate here last time. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic cheese. Dairy from a Jersey cow. A friend of mine was raising Jersey cows.
Yeah.
The dairy that comes from Jersey cows has to be considered among the most precious items on the planet. Like butter from a Jersey cow.
Mm.
Oh my God. She doesn't have the Jersey cow anymore. That was a loss. She's thinking about getting one again because she misses Jersey cow milk.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Poultry of all kinds, chickens and ducks and eggs, lamb, goat, beef, elk, pork, wild pig. including. So this is like the kind of economy that goes around when it's based on giving and not money, because I don't want the money to be part of the exchange when it comes to fish.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's, like you said, it cements community when you give without an expectation of return, but it's just a happy byproduct of a shared wealth.
Yeah.
Then I think that cements society together.
Yeah, it does. It's a thing of beauty, and I'm very, very happy to have that social currency that fish becomes.
Yeah. And fish obviously is a majority of gift that share with people, but also I've been the happy receiver of your delicious vegetables as well, which are, I mean, I've seen all the ribbons in your home. Tell me a little bit about the you kind of, you know, the quest, because that must have been an ambition in some capacity. Well, I guess you explained it with Karen's business and the fact that the main goal was using the best possible ingredients to make the best food.
Mm-hmm.
But then another side of that is like just seeing how delicious you can get these vegetables, and then going to like these vegetable fairs and destroying your opposition.
There's an element of silliness there, and it's a little bit of a spirit of competition that you have to allow yourself once in a while. It's great fun. I mean, it makes visiting the county fair just so much more enjoyable when you have a bunch of entries in there, and you get a bunch of blue ribbons, and you get evil stares from your competitors, and admiration from the normal fair-going clientele. It's fun. It was never really a quest to begin with, but when I started getting the gardening running smoothly, and the soil in balance, and choosing the right crops, the vegetables became irresistibly beautiful and perfect. And when you put them on display and the competition like a county fair, then you get blue ribbons. It's fun.
And that's in Boonville, which is not far from here, right?
Yeah, it's about 45 minutes away.
And that's the whole county.
The Boonville County Fair, it's called.
I didn't realize that it was the whole county that you were competing against.
Yep.
That's even more impressive than the demonstration of flavor.
Yeah, big fish in a small pond, they say. Yeah,
Oh, well, bravo. Do you think that you'll continue to go back to the Boonville Fair, or is that a phase that you...
You know, I have to say that it was such a cooperative effort between me and my wife. And when we did it together, it was like a reinforcement of joy between the two of us. And I have to admit that now that I'm alone and Karen has passed away, the perspective of working together for the same cause is no longer there. Now I'm working for Project Me. It used to be Project Us.
Yeah.
From both our efforts. And Project Me is just not very interesting by comparison.
Yeah.
I think giving is like the most important part of what I do now, because it maintains my my thread in the fabric of social life in another way than just friendship. It knits me together much more closely with the larger community. And this thing about like taking things to the Boonville Fair doesn't have quite the appeal anymore. It's one of the things that goes by the wayside in these kind of life-changing events. And I think it's good, let some other people have a go at it.
Yeah, have those experiences.
Instead of going in there and stealing their thunder. Yeah.
It does make absolute sense. But I think it's this is another part of your personality that I've observed over the last few years as well, is that you are. It's a really important thing to you to like share skills and knowledge and give that knowledge to people. Not only are you giving fish and vegetables to people, but you're giving information of things that you've learned over the last, however many 30-something years since the 80s. And that's something I'm very appreciative of. So thank you for sharing with me and sharing with people who are able to listen to this podcast. But it isn't necessarily over now. I mean, we've talked through your story and the whole, process of becoming the man you are today. But you're also going to give us more information in some future podcasts, I'm excited to say, talking through more specific details of the things that you've learned through your friendships with people who are skilled, through your own mistakes, as the best way to learn is. So yeah, I'm excited to say we're going to talk more, and we're going to talk about how to really focus in on creating fantastic, like a successful homestead, how to fish properly, how to create great vegetables, and all those kinds of things which you have so much knowledge in. So if it's okay with you, then it would be great to continue to tap into that knowledge.
It would be my pleasure.
Well, thank you again. And thanks for coming back on the show. It's been fantastic hearing your stories. And yeah, I hope to be back soon and hear more.
Yeah, that's good. I'm all in. And so now we are going to wrap up this conversation, which gives us a chance to eat some more. Because I have here still pork.
Okay, pork?
Which came from a friend. The pig was raised by a friend of mine. I have here smoked black cod, which is something I rarely do, but this is, I look forward, it's going to be a first taste test for that.
Okay.
And I have dessert, which is from the garden.
Dessert as well.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, fantastic.
So, that is the end of Ejler's story for now. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. Thanks again to Ejler for sharing so much of his time. That man has stories for days. If you enjoyed this adventure, please feel free to share it with someone who you think might enjoy it. Thanks for listening, and until next time.